Okay, great. It's about 7 o'clock here local time. We're going to get started. Let's see. Okay, so welcome to our third Zeppelin talk. This is actually the same topic that we've done since our first one. However, we're including more time zones now. So it's evening here in San Francisco. However, we know it might be morning where you are. So I'm Glenn. I'm an evangelist for Zeppelin. I'm also joined by Patrick, who's going to be helping with the Q&A. Patrick, you want to say hi real quick?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Cool. So throughout the talk, if you have any questions, please feel free to write it into the Q&A area, the chat box. We'll be monitoring that. We're going to do questions at the end, so feel free to ask away, and then I'll cover them. We'll probably spend at least, I don't know, something like 10 or 15 minutes at the end answering questions. So please type them in. There's no bad questions, and we can take those at the end. Okay, so we have an exciting agenda for today. We're going to be talking about Zeppelin style guides. We're going to be talking about the future of Zeppelin style guides, and then we'll do Q&A. So don't worry, this is not slide intensive. That was it. Okay, awesome. So jumping right in. So here I have my Zeppelin dashboard. Today's demo is going to be focused on a Mac, and we're going to be using Sketch as our design tool. But just be aware that you can also use the web app as well in Zeppelin, and also too, we have a Windows app as well. Now, just real quick before I get started, the reason why you'd want to use the Mac app or versus the web interface is that you'll need to use the Mac app if you're going to be exporting assets from your design tool into Zeppelin. There's some other features too that I can show you later that you benefit from downloading the desktop app, but that would be the main reason. Otherwise, you can do everything else pretty much in the web app. Okay, so what we're going to do here is take a look at a project and look at a style guide. Now, we're going to build one of these from scratch. However, I just want to show you an existing one to show you sort of the basics here for how they look and what's inside of them. So style guides really help us create consistent experiences by sharing common components, colors, textiles. So we really want to enforce consistency throughout the different platforms that we're developing for, and then also too between the different apps. So this is what Zeppelin style guides helps us do. So here we can see that we have a color palette. These are colors that we've defined already, and these will show up throughout our designs. A lot of the teams that we work with, they enforce sort of this color consistency, but there are no random values of colors that they want to establish the colors so that every app is kind of consistent and people can rely on that. Then also too for textiles as well, that there'll be textiles that are specific to your brand that you want to maintain throughout each app. And then we have these reusable elements called components, and this is something that Zeppelin can also help you manage. So each style guide basically has a colors and textiles tab and also a components tab as well. And in Sketch, these are known as symbols, but different design tools call them different things. What's really powerful here is that for each one of these symbols or components that we have, we can also find out what screen it happens to be used on. So of course, we want to reuse as much as we can. And if we're using a navigation bar and a lot of different screens throughout our design, we can see that over here in the bottom right. So if we clicked on that screen, we would be able to see here that indeed we have components as part of this design. So what this should signal, if an engineer is going to be implementing this, what this should signal to them is that this is code that's already been written probably, and that they should look in their component library, and wherever that code is stored, they should be checking that out. But backing up a little bit, let's create a new project, and I'll show you the process of building out a style guide from scratch, and then we can take it from there. So for those of you that just joined, by the way, please type your questions in the Q&A area. I'll take those at the end. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, I'll answer them towards the end of the presentation. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to create a new project. We can select a different platform. The reason why we do have different platform types in Zeppelin is because we'll tailor the assets and the unit types to that platform. So if you're designing for web versus Android, the assets will come in a different form, and then also too, the dimensions will be seasoned towards whatever platform that we're developing for. So I'm going to grab iOS here, create a new iOS app. And the first thing that we want to do, best practice, is that we want to give this a good name. So maybe we'll do something like Travel Beta. Okay, so now we're ready to export into Zeppelin. So I'm going to go over to Sketch. Here I just have the latest version of Sketch, and we can see here that we have different pages for our different platforms. Today we're going to be doing iOS, so I'm going to grab all these iOS screens. Now, I highly recommend if you're using Zeplin often, we do have a way for you to get to the export selected up here at the top, but I recommend using the keyboard shortcut. So this will change depending on if you're using Mac or Windows, but I highly recommend using it. It'll just save you a lot of time. So I'm going to select all these screens, and I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Control-Command-E. So we're greeted with the import dialog here. What we can do is we can select the organization that we're a part of, Game of Thrones. No one type in any spoilers into the chat box. And I'm going to import into the project that I just created, Travel Beta. So in case you're curious, if you use Zeplin a lot, the length of time that it takes to export is just proportional to the file sizes. So if you have a lot of different designs that have high-res imagery, or if you've marked a lot of things as exportable, we'll just be generating those assets. But this is a kind of a quick thing, so went by really fast. Okay, so clicking into one of the designs that we just exported from Sketch into Zeplin, we can see here that we have some typeface information and we have some colors, but we don't really know yet contextually if this is part of our design system. We understand that this is the Open Sans bold font, and we understand that this yellow is whatever is written there. However, we don't know if this is part of our design system. We don't know if this is a known color. We're not sure if these typefaces are part of our brand, and we don't know if these elements are components. We don't know if these are reusable elements. So all we've done so far is just import the designs. So if we click over into the style guide, we can see here that automatically from the last export, it asks us, it says, well, hey, I detected these colors. Do you want to add them? So yeah, of course we want to do that. So if we just click add colors, now we're establishing our color palette. Now, if I just show you in Sketch real quick, if we happen to define document colors from within Sketch, we'll bring those in. So if you happen to have colors that you've defined, we'll suggest those. And we do that now for other design tools that we support as well. Okay, so jumping back over, so now for this value, we know that it's not just some discrete yellow. Now we have context for what it is. And if we click back over to that same design we were on, we can see now that this is indeed part of our design system, that it's part of the color palette. And we know that it's not just any light orange, it's Zeplin light orange. So, by the way, I just remembered, so if you are working within a Mac and you happen to be using the color picker, anytime you have an open project, we'll actually tie into the color picker. And you can see over here, like this, this icon, we'll actually load the colors for whatever project is currently open in your style guide or within Zeplin. And we'll actually suggest these colors that you can use. So if you wanted to do this like for your desktop background or whatever other app that you happen to be using at the time, you can just click the color picker and then change your color to whatever you happen to be working with in Zeplin. So it's a fun fact. It could be useful not just for background colors, but maybe for other tools that you happen to be using and you want to maintain those colors. So just a little pro tip there. Okay, so we're kind of halfway there. We just added the colors, but we'll also detect colors, textiles as well. So we'll add all this textiles as well, and we'll see here that we have custom header text. And again, this will show up now from within our designs. So if we click on something, it might be some custom header text, and we know that this is a font that we're using throughout our design system. Okay, so we're halfway there. We did colors and textiles, and now I want to do components. So where we see a lot of what we see a lot of teams do is that they'll do this, they'll import their designs and they'll add the colors and textiles, but they're not aware too that you can also bring in the symbols from within Sketch as well. So that's what we want to do next. So I know it's a little bit confusing. Symbols in Sketch become components in Zeplin. Each tool uses a different name, but we just call them components. And really all they are is just reusable elements that we see throughout our designs. So in this case, we have two areas that we have our symbols here. We have mobile symbols in iOS. I'll do mobile first. I also want to give some tips for organization. So what we can do is we can grab all these, and I can just hit Command A, and then now we can export them, either through the menu or the keyboard shortcut. I'm going to double click there. We can see that now our symbols are loading. And I'm also going to grab two of the iOS specific ones as well. So I'll grab these, use the keyboard command shortcut, and we'll go ahead and export those to Travel Beta iOS as well. So anytime you want to see status of the upload, you can just click up here in this bar, and this bar, the circle will close when it's finished completing the export. So we can just jump over to the style guide, or we can actually click this here, and we can jump over. Now, you might see that these components are a little bit disorganized, and of course we want to organize them now. So what we can do, just in case you weren't aware already, you can type in up here and type in icons, let's just say for example. And we can actually select all these, right-click, and do a new section. And I'll call this something that's very easily identifiable, icons. So that just makes it really easy for you to organize sections from within your style guide. So I might do that too with card. Okay, let me just grab these cards. We can click and drag and do a new section. Here we do card. Okay. But as I showed you before, the real reason why we want to add all these components and then further organize them is that now if we hop back over to our dashboard and within our design, because now we have colors, textiles, and components, the components bit for each element that we click now, we'll see this little blue header at the top. Or we can look on the right here and see also a link here too for components. So what we can do is we can actually jump over to our style guide and we can see that this is indeed a component and it's used in these different designs. So it just helps you very neatly organize your components. And we can also see now that these are used throughout our different designs. So just a couple more organization tips here. We can further categorize any of the sections into groups as well. So if we want to grab a few of these icons, let's grab a few of these like this, and maybe I want to do right-click, we can do groups within sections. So we might want to do red. You'll really only have to do this once, organizing, and then once you do that, you can just update the components from there. And really only one person has to do this, so it'll only take a few minutes to organize them nicely. I can show you too that once you have them categorized into sections, we can right-click and collapse and have a neat list of those sections, and we can rearrange them and whatnot. Okay, as part of this webinar too, I also want to fold in some helpful tips. From each section of components that you might have, if you want to link directly to it, you can do so just by clicking these dots, and then you can copy a link directly to this. We share two types of links in Zeplin. We share a web link and an app link. The web link just opens up in the web interface, and the app will just open up in the app. Most designers will use the app just because that's what's required in order to export the assets into Zeplin. So depending on who you're targeting, you'll use a different link. So one good feature too that you might be interested in using if you are using the desktop app, if you click over here on the bottom left, we actually do have a pop-out feature. This might be useful to show your engineers. If someone's going to be implementing your design as you're finished with it and you want to hand it off now to engineering, they can overlay this onto their simulator or emulator or web browser and not just guess to see if they've implemented the design correctly. They can now verify and overlay it, and then we can change the opacity. But you'll need the desktop app to do this because we can't change the opacity of a web window, which is a limitation of web browsers. But you can just overlay this, and then we can just kind of verify that the design was implemented correctly. So it's a useful thing. I wanted to mention too that anytime that you want to quickly grab like these screens and share them with somebody, you could always just select them and drag and drop them. We can see over here that we just quickly exported some PNG files. If you use Slack, you can quickly drag and drop them into a Slack window. It might be very helpful. Another pro tip too, for any project that you're in, if you click on share, we have a feature called scene that can be enabled. It's down here at the bottom. If you enable scene, we'll sort of turn on for you this mini sort of report or portfolio of what this app is. So let's just say that you want to get some initial feedback or you want to share this really quickly. Anybody with this link can open this, and then they can see your colors and your textiles, and then maybe also to see the designs as well. And then what you can do is you can actually vote on certain screens. So that might be a cool thing that you want to share around with the team before going forward with the design. And yeah, you don't need a Zeplin account to see this. And if you want to turn it off, you can just go right back to share, and you can click on these 3 dots and unshare as well. Okay, cool. Just a couple more pro tips. If you happen to be using a Mac, and a lot of folks that I work with happen to be using one, so you can use the familiar pinch to zoom if you happen to be on a design. You don't have to do like the command plus minus or click down here. It's just a more intuitive way to use it. Just a couple more things. If you happen to be uploading frequently and you're working with a lot of different people on the design, we have versioning. So if you click in the bottom left of any screen that you happen to be on, we can add commit messages for anything that you're working on. So if you want to see maybe like a previous iteration of the design, we can actually go back in time and see the commit messages and see what was accomplished as we were collaborating together. Okay, great. Just a couple more things too. I'm going to hop back over to Travel Beta. In Sketch, we have the ability to mark things as exportable. So we can click over here on the bottom right. Every time we do that, Zeplin will automatically generate assets for you. So if I click back over into the style guide and we go to components, if a component happens to be marked as exportable, we'll be able to see over here on the right, basically the assets that we can download. So I'll find one that's exportable. Let's see. Okay, these are not marked as exportable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of these and I'm going to make this exportable. Save, and then now let's export it. I just want to show you that we'll automatically generate these assets for you. Okay, for some reason it's not showing up, but essentially we'll generate PNG assets for you in different densities, 1x, 2x, 3x values, and then your engineers can download them. So that might be super useful if they happen to be implementing the design and they need those image assets. Also too, from any of the screens that we happen to be on, if you click on this assets knife, you'll be able to download all the assets for that particular screen. So click on that and you can grab all of them in one go. Okay, cool. So as I mentioned in the agenda, this is Zeplin Styleguides, which is great. However, we have a preview of the future of Zeplin Styleguides. So as we're creating style guides for each one of the projects, there might be a component that we use in many different projects that we happen to be developing. And one limitation right now, style guides, is that they're project specific. So if we click into a style guide and we see a component, this component's only available to the style guide. So if we updated this, we'll have to update each one of the project style guides. But I'm happy to announce that we have a new feature that we're rolling out. It's currently in beta. I'm going to share the link with everybody, so don't worry if you're scrambling to copy it down. We have a new feature called Shared Style Guides. So instead of just having a style guide per project, what we can actually do is that we can actually share multiple projects as one style guide. So it's not just we have a style guide in isolation. We can share with as many projects as we like that style guide. And it's really powerful, so that's what I want to show you now. Okay, so this is a basic tree structure. This is completely customizable. This is just a way that we suggest, for most teams, this is what they'll probably be doing. But again, you can build this out any way that you like. Just very simply, we have a base style guide, which we call the core library. Basically in here, we just have high-level colors and textiles. I would say it would be very rare, I think, for any company to change their colors depending on what platform that they were developing for. So in our core library, these are things like colors and textiles that we want to remain consistent throughout all the platforms and all the apps that we're developing. It's very unlikely that we would change our orange depending on, for Zeplin, depending on what platform that we were developing for. So every project can inherit these very high-level colors and textiles, and we can keep those in this core library. But furthermore, of course, we're going to have things that are specific to web and specific to mobile, and then we can further categorize them into iOS and Android. So these are called child style guides, and they're platform specific. So this is a web one, this is an iOS, this is an Android. For this particular example, we actually share a lot of components in between iOS and Android. But of course, we'll have platform specific components for each one of those platforms. See, the idea is that we want to move as much as we can into these shared style guides, and they'll inherit up the tree. So everything that is in web will also inherit from everything from core library. And everything in iOS library will also inherit from the mobile and the core as well. So it's sort of a goal as an organization that we want to move as much as we can into these shared style guides and higher up in the tree so that we can share as much as we can between the different platforms. Again, that will sort of save everybody time by reusing what's already there. There won't be any sort of confusion about what color it happens to be because we know it's a known brand color. And then again, signaling to the engineers to make them more efficient, they'll understand that, hey, this is a component that we've already coded, and it will just make their life easier. So they won't have to guess to see if it's a component, they can see it from the shared style guide. So we've also revamped to the interface here. If you use style guides often, we can see here that we have a left navigation, and this makes it really easy for you to manage these and to organize them. So we can collapse all sections. We can see here our neatly organized library. And then also too, we can also link to it as well. So right now we clicked into the iOS platform specific style guide, but we can also jump over to the mobile one if we wanted to. We also just made it easier to organize these as well. We can click and drag and drop into a different section if we wanted to. We do that really easily. And again, when we jump over to the project interface, if we click into projects, now if we click into our iOS project, for example, just like we did before, and we click into style guide, we can see here now that we are inheriting from the local style guide, the iOS, and the mobile. Now what a local style guide is just like we use it now, the style guide that's just specific to this project. But we're also, because there's always going to be components perhaps or elements that are specific to this one project and can't be shared for whatever reason with other platforms. And that's fine, and we can just keep that in the local style guide. But of course, we also want to inherit the wealth of resources that we have in the iOS and mobile shared style guides as well. Okay, cool. And just like we saw before too, if we click into any one of the designs that we happen to be working on, we can also see here the blue header at the top. And just like we had before, it will still link to the project style guide, but we can see in this case that happens to be the iOS library style guide. So again, this was an inherited component that we happen to be linked to now. We can also always jump over to the shared style guide. So this is in beta. We're going to launch really soon with this. It's a really exciting thing. I'm going to share the link with you too to download this as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump back over to the slide for a second and share some things, and then we can jump into the Q&A. Okay, cool. So just recapping really quickly, we built out a style guide. We added colors, textiles, and components. We also previewed shared style guides or Zeplin beta. So this is an example of a tree structure. So this is a beta version of Zeplin that we're going to share the link with, and we'd love to get your feedback on it. So if you want to try it, we'd love to see that. So yeah, I'm going to share this with all the registrants as well. The beta link, it's just, we have our own link shortener. So we have ZPL.io, Zeplin beta. Also too, we have a survey as well. We're going to be doing a lot more of these. I'm going to be doing a lot more of these Zeplin talks. So if you have any ideas for topics that you want to see covered, or if you want to help me guest present, we're also open to that. Just let us know. And then also too, how we're doing, how was it? So. And then if you want to contact us, just hi at Zeplin.io. So now I'm going to jump into the Q&A. So while I was presenting, Patrick has been curating questions. So thank you for asking those. If you have any more, just please drop them into the Q&A area, but we'll spend a few minutes here going through them. I'm going to share the recording with everybody. So everybody that registered will get it. And if you don't get it, let me know. Okay, will the recording be available? Yes, recording will be available. Okay, can these color palettes sync with Sketch? Okay, that's a great question. Color palettes sync with Sketch. So when we export from Sketch into Zeplin, we'll suggest colors that we detect as part of that export. If you happen to not see that, by the way, I'm gonna open up the regular Zeplin. If you happen to not see that, by the way, if it's not suggesting that, hey, I detected a bunch of colors, you want to add them, it could be the case that someone configured it off. We will ask you to dismiss. If that happens to you, you can always go to help, and then you can reset the suggested colors and suggested textiles. So if for whatever reason, if you're encountering where you can't it's not suggesting the colors that should be added, you can reset that. I want to mention too that if you started a new project and you didn't have any colors or any designs exported, so I'm just gonna create a new project, call this Patrick's app. And then if you happen to be part of our organization plan, you can copy colors from another project. So you might already have established a color palette from something else, and we can actually copy those into Zeplin from a different app. So if it's something that you're really happy with already, we can copy that in and just add that already. So that might be something that you want to do. Also too, we can see over here on the right that we've generated a lot of code for these colors. So that's really good. Okay, cool. So if you change the color palette in Sketch and sync again, we'll update and delete the previous colors. That's a good question. I think what it will do is it will just update the color with the most recent version. So if we were to change that Zeppelin light orange and we're changing the value of it, it happens from time to time that people might want to change a discrete value of any color that they're exporting. We'll just export the correct value that you selected. It's probably likely that someone wouldn't be messing with the document colors and saving that, because that would apply to everybody that's using that sketch file. But yeah, when you change a color and then you resync, if it's a different color, we'll add it alongside of that existing one. But if you change it, the document color value, we'll overwrite that within the style guide. Ooh, I want to mention something too, just remembered. So as people build out their shared style guide tree, it's probably important for them to only allow certain people to actually change, let's just say, like the core library with the colors. So right now, as part of our organization plan, the editors are the ones that are allowed to edit the shared style guides. So just in case you're curious. So yeah, it wouldn't be the case that like a member could come in and mess up a style guide or something like that. It would be editors and higher that are able to edit those. Okay. Let's move on here. Okay, if we need to design for 2 or more different devices, does that mean we have to create different projects? Yeah, so as I mentioned before, the reason why we have different project types is just because we're going to be seasoning those assets and those unit types depending on the platform that we're developing for. So in order for this to make sense, both in image format and then also too in unit type, that's why we have different projects. But if you're curious about like organization, if you name the project something specific between the different platforms, you could quickly search maybe just for that. And then, you know, you can clearly see here that we have our iOS travel project, our web travel project. Also too, from within this dashboard, if you wanted to just quickly get maybe the project that you're working on most recently, you can sort by different criteria here. We have on our roadmap, by the way, to give you better organizational features for the project dashboard, so stay tuned for that. But right now, just in case you could search by name and quickly see all the apps that have that name. But most people do less updated because they want to see the most recent project that they've created. But yeah, that's the reason why we have different project types. Again, it's just for the unit types. So when the engineer is implementing this design, that they're using units that are applicable to the platform that they're working on, like Android and iOS and web. And then also to the actual asset types are in a file format or in an image format that's easily consumable by that platform. There's one more thing I wanted to mention too. So you can, for the case of different, depending on what we're developing for, we can actually export assets directly into Xcode and Android Studio. That's for colors and that's for the image assets as well. So what we can do is that you can point it to the project directory if you're developing for Android or iOS. And this would be like the res folder for Android or the XC assets folder for iOS. And we can directly import those into your project directory. So instead of having to like copy and paste the image assets into there, we can import those automatically. We can navigate the file structure and add those. So it's a nice pro tip as well. Okay, I didn't see clearly how did you name colors in Sketch and how did you add those into your color palette? Cool. Yeah, so it's not not like an amazing trick, but I guess it is a trick. So anytime that you happen to be within a design and you have a background color, you could always add, this isn't going to go consistent with the rest of the app, but if you did have a color like this, you could always just click this plus icon. And what that will do is that will add the document color. So this is like a coral color. So you can add that. And then now if we export again into Zeplin, so I'm just gonna grab this. By the way, if you wanna export artboard, you don't have to select the whole thing. You don't have to like click and drag over the entire thing. We can just select any element from within it. And then we can use our familiar keyboard shortcut, Control Command E, save and continue. And then what we can do is that we can export just this one design, this one artboard. So you don't have to select the whole thing. We'll export the whole artboard automatically. And we can see there that we have our core color, and then see the suggested. So we see coral at the bottom. Cool. Just make sure too, if we click into here, we'll be able to see that this is coral as well. Cool. All right. Is there any way to show code related to the components showing up on screen? Our developers are using React Storybook and would like to leverage what they have. Yeah, so that's something that's really important that I left out. So in case you're not aware already, for any project that we happen to be working with in Zeplin, we generate code snippets for engineers through something called extensions. And we can enable and disable various extensions. So this is something that if you haven't made your engineers aware of already, definitely let them know. You can explore more as well. So these help us generate various code snippets depending on maybe a language that we happen to be using. And also too, I want to make you aware that you can actually create your own. So we have documentation for building your own. If you happen to have an idea for one, or if you want to take next steps in building out your own, just please let us know and we can help you out there. But basically you can do something custom depending on whatever you need done. So one interesting one I heard recently is that for any color that's within your design that happens to be not part of your style guide, the idea is that you can have a warning from within the extension saying that these colors are not defined within our style guide. That just might be helpful just in case we have a color that might be off-brand or something that hasn't been vetted yet. And to answer your question, we do have a React Native extension that you can add to Zeplin. So anytime that you do add an extension, you can choose the project that you happen to be developing for. So let's just say that happens to be like our travel beta app. I'll go and add that to Zeplin, and then we can see how that's enabled. And depending on the plugin and depending on what it's going to be doing, we can generate code snippets depending on if it's an asset or if it's textile or if it's color. And you'll start to see those in the bottom right. And we can also see those too in the style guide as well. That right here we have Swift, but we'll also generate React Native as well. So you can just copy these, and depending on if this is something that you need to be pasted in, you can check these out. And also too, for components, you can click into the layer information from within a component. The reason behind the avatar is I was checking out that Papyrus font before. So, okay, cool. Let's see, can we add documentation or descriptions about components to style guide to provide more detail? Yeah, so that's a really, really great question. It's something I failed to show you. So if we click into a style guide and we click into components, yes, for each component, you can write a description. So there might be something specific, or you could even, I guess, link to like an area of the repo where this code might be written for this thing. But not only can you add descriptions for individual components, you can also do it for sections as well. So for icons, you can just click these buttons, and then we can type in maybe something like something really important. Not that, but if you do have something important to say, you can type it there. But yeah, you can use this in different ways. For each component, you can add a description. Again, you might want to let the engineers know something specific about this, or you could write a note to a different designer. The whole idea with Zeplin is that you're collaborating with other teammates. So designers will be collaborating on designs, or maybe even collaborating with engineers by leaving comments from within a design and pinging people. But also too, that extends into other places in the product. For each screen, you can also add a description as well. And then for sections within section here, you can also write descriptions as well. But this might be something important. Yeah, you can write a description for each one of the screens. You can write them as comments on the design itself, and then also too for sections within components, you can write a description, and then also too for the component itself. So if you have neat ideas for what type of description that you happen to be writing about a component, let us know. I wanted to also mention too, we have on our roadmap the ability to link these components to code. So maybe right now you might include like a link maybe to your code repository for this specific place where this component code might live. But we're going to develop a really nifty way for you to link these components to code to save even more time. Of course, we want to sort of, the engineers have to implement these designs, anything that we can do as a collaboration tool to help you get your product to market faster. That's what the space that we're operating in here. Okay, cool. What is the order in which the screens are imported from Sketch? Just the rearrange. So yeah, this is another thing that I could have mentioned before, but depending on how you have these structured, so as you saw before in mobile symbols, I have like all the icons in a row. Now, one way you could do this is that you could just select these icons and export them, and that's one way that you could do that. However, we also have the ability from within Zeplin to organize the order in which they import. And you can find that simply by going to the menu, and clicking experimental, and clicking import in order. And once you select that, you'll be able to sort it by various criteria. So position will kind of go from left to right, row by row, but also too, we can follow the layers as well. So if it's importing in a jumbled way, and you had it very neatly organized, you could enable that and have it import in order, and then that it will come in better. But as I mentioned before, regardless of how it imports, one handy trick I found is just to search for maybe, if you happen to name them in a consistent way, you can just type in the name controls and select them and then create a new section. But yeah, you can just import in order as well, and depending on how you have them structured, you can select the one that's applicable for you. Controls. Yeah, these are great questions. Keep them coming. Let's see. For Android and Zeppelin, for some components generating code like text view style properties, it'd be good to get the layout code for each Android screen that is automatically generated. Okay, I think I can take that one as a follow-up. Maybe I don't fully understand right now, but we can see each text view with style properties. Let me take that one as a follow-up, and I can answer that in the email that we send out right after the session. I want to ask something irrelevant. How come some of the colors in RGB format, hexadecimal format, how can I control this when exporting to Zeplin? So that's also a good question too. We can configure the colors and textiles. We can, depending on, you can always select from each one of the designs. Here, let me jump back over to the project that we have here. From the color palette, it is configurable to change the hex value. So let me just find it here. So for any color that you happen to be using, let me jump over to Style Guide. So for each one of the colors, you can configure this. The projects. We can change this from hex to ARGB, things like that. I forget exactly where it is, but this is configurable. I'll take this one as a follow-up. And what you can do is that there's like an area with 3 lines, and we can change this from hex or RGB, and we can set that. We also have other options too, like when we're from like within the style guide. We can also change sometimes the naming format. So if it happens to be a camel case and you want to change it to something else, we can do that as well. Okay, cool. So what we'll do is we'll look at the other questions, maybe the ones that we didn't have yet. I want to thank you all for joining. We'll be doing another one of these next month. I don't know what the topic is yet, but stay tuned. And please take the survey and let us know how we did. Okay, thanks everybody. See you next time.